Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to an episode of Draft Capital powered by Built Bar. I'm going rogue today. This is Stephen Gillespie, usually just one of the co-hosts here. But I decided to hijack the show for a very fun episode that we're going to be doing. And I'm not going to be by myself. For those who are just listening, if you're watching, appreciate it. But for those listening, it's not just going to be me rambling. I'm going to have Tyler Rucker, our first returning guest here on Draft Capital. Super excited to have him. He's back from his Vegas vacation that he had with Albert Gim, a fellow No Ceilings brethren over there at the collective that they got going on. But without any further delay, Tyler, what's going on, man? Good to have you on the show.
What's going on? I'm excited to talk some late night hoops. Right after Duke Gonzaga, wow. That felt like Christmas morning. So I mean, that was fun. I'm just excited to be back on Draft Capital, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And today's show title is going to be entitled "Fabulous Friday." I like alliteration; it's cool, just kind of rolls off the tongue or whatever. But I'm not so good with the names here. But what we are going to do more so than just come up with show title names is break down all the games that we had go on today. And we're only going to talk about three of them, Tyler. But there was a full slate of games on today. A lot of guys that we're going to be seeing be called on, on the upcoming draft. And it's going to be fun to break down even more of these games. But we have, the Duke and Gonzaga game that you just mentioned, probably the game of the year is in a lot of aspects, right? You had Chet versus Paulo, Coach K's retirement, number one versus number two. It's one of the most anticipated games, but we're also going to be discussing other teams as well. But before we get into it, Tyler, just what was your overall reaction from today's full slate of games? Like, how much basketball did you just intake before coming onto the show?
It's pretty amazing how good the college basketball season pretty much has been to start out. I mean, the games have just been incredible. We've got so many guys that are making some serious noise as draft prospects. I know we're going to talk about Auburn on the slate. Like Jabari Smith's been fantastic. You got Duke, you got Gonzaga, but there's just also a lot of players that are starting to really shine in the beginning of the year and kind of make a statement with their play. So, yeah, today was fantastic. Just another great slate of games. I feel like the entire last week has been special in a weird way. So, I'm so excited for the rest of the season. I just think some of these teams are going to be powerhouses, and there's also some teams that are starting to believe that they can almost be spoilers, if you want to say it that way, and climb up the ranks. So, really good year of college basketball and really good year for the NBA draft. Looks like we're going to have another strong class.
Yeah, and probably more deep than was anticipated coming into the season. And I'm very much looking forward to it too. And like you, I share that same mindset, Tyler, where it feels like the season has been long and short at the same time, if that makes sense. It's like the basketball is so good, so young. It usually takes a long time to get some good high quality games, but all these tournaments that have been going on, and then again, we're going to be focusing here shortly on Gonzaga and Duke. There's a lot of high profile games this early on, and it's just been something to see, man. But before we get into these games, I want to remind everyone that support for this show is brought to you by Built Bar. Unlike all the other bars out there that taste either like old Play-Doh or a piece of cardboard, when you eat a Built Bar, you will think that you are cheating on your diet with a delicious chocolate dessert. If your kids find out how good these things are, you're going to have to buy more because they're going to be begging for them. They have great flavors such as cookies and cream, double chocolate, strawberry, peanut butter brownie, and much more. Built Bar now has a mystery flavor, and if you guess that flavor correctly, you could win a prize. Just go over to built.com, enter in promo code off the ball, all caps, no spaces, at checkout, and you could get a 10% discount at built.com with promo code off the ball. So, Tyler, we're going from a great product like Built Bar to the premier game of tonight. We're not gonna keep the listeners waiting for that one, although we're gonna have great conversation even after this game. But we're gonna go right into it, man. This is a game that was fresh on both of our heads. Again, we're talking about Gonzaga and Duke, number 5 team in the nation. That being Duke going up against Gonzaga. And what a game it was, man. I mean, down to the wire, very close game. What were your initial thoughts, coming into this game? Because I know you recently watched Chet play in person, and, we can kind of couple that with your expectations, and then how did the rest of the game play out based on that?
I thought it was going to be interesting, how Gonzaga just kind of had this dominant win in Las Vegas earlier this week against UCLA. I thought it was going to be a little bit of a wake up call for them because, although UCLA was number 2 in the nation, I just thought they felt kind of matched up weird against Gonzaga. And heading into this game, I thought Duke was a much, much tougher matchup when you went down the line, even though they were, number 5 in the nation. And, we were all excited for obvious reasons. It was, like you said earlier, number 1 pick potentially versus number 2 pick. A lot of people wanted to see, Paulo go against Chet, see how Chet's frame held up, how Chet basically dealt with Duke's physical bigs. And, it was a game in which I think some of the stats from Chet might not be as promising as some people might have wanted to see, but I thought actually he did a lot on the court that kind of impressed me without his shot falling. I think he ended up 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 from downtown, but he still made some really smart decisions. We obviously saw he got into foul trouble early, but really liked what I saw from him in his minutes on the court. I thought he was much tougher in the second half. Paulo was fantastic. Mm-hmm. He just kind of went on a tear in the first half, and then, we'll all make the jokes about the cramps because he kind of ran into a conditioning, issue in the second half, had some cramps, had to miss some time, but it was worth the hype. Now I want that to be the national championship. I want another game of that. So, so far it lives up to the hype, and that's going to be a fun one to go back and watch and dive deeper and evaluate.
Yeah, for sure. And, ultimately the result of the game was Duke winning 84-81. You touched on Paulo Boncaro. He finished with 21 points, 8 of 17 shooting, 3 of 8 from deep, 5 boards, 2 assists, a steal, and only 1 turnover. Pretty solid for a guy who's making a lot of decisions out there on the floor. But what's interesting to me was that, that first half he finished with 20 of those 21. And Tyler, we were talking offline, while the game was actually going on. And one of the things that you pointed out was you wondered how that conditioning was going to play out through the rest of the game. Because, Paulo came out, shot out of a cannon, 20 points to close out the first half. He didn't even play the final, 2.5, close to 3 minutes of that. I mean, almost a point per minute. It's pretty solid production. But like I said, he came into the second half after that short break, and it just seemed like he couldn't get his body to be loose out there on the court. It was cramping up. What was it about his performance in the first half that made you hone in on that conditioning? And then is this a concern that you think that's going to continue throughout the year? Because it's not the first time that we've seen this from Paulo so far this season.
Yeah, I think, it was weird. He was just flying all over the place. He had so much energy in the first half. It wasn't just with his scoring. He was eager to run the break. He was making passes all over the court. I mean, he just looked like a little kid out there, just pumped up. And I didn't really ever think the conditioning was going to come into the picture because I joked with you. I just said he looked like he took a bunch of espresso shots.
Yeah.
And then they kind of panned to him when the ball was out of bounds, and he just looked like he was, breathing for dear life. And, obviously with how hard he was playing, it's not like I was overly concerned by that, but I just kind of had some weird thought of like, is that going to be a problem in the second half? And then, because I went back to the opening game against Michigan State, you kind of saw he had the cramp issue. And then all of a sudden that plays into fact in the second half. He misses the most of it, comes back in. He just never looked right. He looked like he was trying to kind of play through it. And then finally, like you said, he gets taken out with around like less than 3 minutes left in a tight game, which you're not getting pulled out unless you're just really in pain or you just can't push through it. So I don't know if it's something I'm worried about moving forward, but obviously it's going to be in the back of our minds, watching him progress, because for as brilliant as he was in the first half, like you said, he ended up with 1 point in the second half, and he just was kind of a non-factor. There were stretches in the game where they just didn't have any offense really going because they ran into foul trouble and Paulo was not even on the court. So overall, I thought it was a fantastic performance. I mean, he checked so many boxes. Executives and scouts are going to be more than thrilled with what they saw from him tonight. You know, I joked with you earlier, I think there's going to be plenty of draft fans that are going to be like, oh, he's the easy number one now, but it's a
over.
long season.
It's over. Just go ahead and ink it in. It's everybody else is behind him now.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously a little tongue in cheek there, but I mean, it's hard to see though, Tyler, that stretch and just be like, it's gonna be like to see something like that and say someone else has a chance. I mean, you can almost not blame people, but on the other side of that same coin, though, Tyler, you're 100% right that there's a lot of time left, and there are two other guys, maybe even three, that do have a strong case to be number one. But again, it's early, even though, like I said earlier, it feels like it's early and late at the same time with the quality of basketball that we're seeing now. But Paulo during that stretch was just a sight to behold. I mean, it was like you said, it was everything that it was built up to be. But while Paulo was dealing with struggles, we saw Wendell Moore Jr. He also had 20 points. He was 6 of 10 from the floor, 1 of 2 from deep. Did a lot of his work from the free throw line tonight. 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, 3 turnovers. I don't think that if the betting lines were open beforehand, who the kind of the Robin to Paulo's Batman would be, I don't know how many people would have picked Wendell Moore, considering, that they have Williams out there and Trevor Keels has been kind of a Twitter favorite so far in the early going. What about Wendell's Moore performance stood out to you tonight?
He's just been having one of these remarkable bounce back years. After he came to Duke previously, he had all this buzz and he was this big recruit that came to campus, and it just never seemed to kind of click. And I think Duke sort of changed his role and made him more of like a complementary piece. And he's just become this entirely different prospect that is just thriving and putting up, fantastic numbers. He just looks like he has this renewed confidence with his game that is just fantastic. I think he's one of these guys that is just skyrocketing up draft boards early in the year, because now you're seeing all of the talents finally coming together. All of the pieces of the puzzle are finally like fitting. And I just thought going into this game, I thought there was a couple guys that almost could have big nights that, we weren't talking about, because obviously we were focusing on the two big boys, but I thought Wendell Moore was a guy that could have a stamp on this game. And he just kept making plays all over the place. I just really am impressed with kind of the switch he's flipped this year, because I wasn't so high on him, watching him the last couple of years. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is an absolute, dream for a team to potentially draft someone like him and maybe put him as like a complementary piece with your rotation. Just really intrigued to watch him throughout the year. And I think he just has had a really strong couple of weeks. I think scouts are going to start buzzing around him. So I thought he was fantastic tonight.
Yeah, and you mentioned on one of your shows that you did for No Ceilings, I was listening to you and Albert, and it was phenomenal shows. I mentioned on Twitter, it was like the Lord of the Rings of draft, content, a couple episodes and pregame, postgame. Obviously, the whole aspect of you two, meeting and hanging out with each other was a lot of fun to listen to, just as a fan, man. And you in particular pointed out to Duke as being a fun team for you. It's probably one of the most fun Duke teams that you've ever had the pleasure of viewing. And watching them tonight, you see a lot of that. Not only were these two, speaking of Paulo and Wendell Moore, but I mentioned Williams earlier. Kills didn't have a strong outing at all, but I mean this team overall picked it up. Outside of the two that we just mentioned, again, Moore and Boncaro, what about the team play really stood out to you? Because, I mean, if you look at the breakdown and how statistically, the Tar Heels performed against Gonzaga, they actually shot less, worse from the floor in a lot of aspects. They were out rebounded by double digits. I mean, it's hard to win a collegiate basketball game and get out rebounded by double digits. And they had fewer assists, but they took better care of the ball, things of that nature. But a little bit about, how the team performed compared to Gonzaga. Um, how did they perform in that aspect to you, as far as team overall?
I just went into this game like you hinted before. I just thought I've never, and I know Blue Devil fans will probably come after me for saying this, but the last couple of years, these Duke teams have just been kind of a weird, mix up where I thought they just got a bunch of big name recruits and they never seem to kind of have that perfect fit. They always seem to be a little odd. And with this team, it's just, I'm in love with their roster build because it's just a lot of nasty players that are physical. They get after it on both sides of the ball. They're emotional. They just have that mentality edge. And that's why I thought Gonzaga might struggle going from just an easy win. Like whenever you have an easy win where you're feeling pretty good about yourself, and then a team's coming in the building that's hungry as you just were, but plays way different and matches up with you way better than your previous game, I just think it's going to be a tough matchup. And that's what I thought with Duke coming in. They had these players that were physical on defense. They had the Trevor Keels didn't even have that great of a night, but I still thought he was outstanding with some of the plays he made all over the place. He didn't shoot it well, but he still made an impact defensively because he's just tough. He made some good passes. And then, Wendell Moore and Mark Williams was absolutely sensational tonight. I think we're going to be talking about Boncaro and Chet, but Mark Williams was, incredible. I don't think they win that game without him. He was just all over the place, and that was a statement game for him. And then, they still have guys like AJ Griffin, who I think is going to kind of take a little bit, but he's going to find his groove throughout the year because he came back early from a preseason injury. So Duke's got a squad. That is a wagon of a team that can beat you in a lot of ways. And to answer your question specifically, I thought they did such a good job of – Gonzaga's such a good passing team, and they pushed the ball up the floor so fast. It seemed every time Duke was going to try to pull away, Gonzaga just punched them right back in the mouth. And Duke did a great job of kind of just staying the course, like not letting them freak them out. They regained their composure. They just kept coming. They took Gonzaga's best punch. I thought the game was a 20-point game in the first half, and all of a sudden it's 3 at halftime after Gonzaga bowed back, and Duke just regained their composure and just kept attacking, kept playing the same way that they were the whole night. So it was definitely an impressive win for Duke.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And let's focus now on the other side of the ball. We did obviously the winning is a lot of fun to talk about, right? And as draft analysts, we're going to have to talk about a guy named Chet Holmgren. And he's, as you know, Tyler, very polarizing, right? For anyone who's listening, he's largely criticized for his frame by the detractors, but the people who support him, they point to his intelligence and clever basketball mind. And I feel like he did a really good job of showing that tonight. 16 points, 8 of 13 shooting. You mentioned that he didn't hit any of his 3 attempts from deep. 7 rebounds, 3 blocks, and 3 turnovers. And Tyler, there was no assists recorded, but I don't feel like it was because he was a black hole on offense. I think that he did a good job of moving the ball within the flow of the offense. So I don't look at that 0 assist total and think, oh my goodness, what happened? Especially if you watch the game, that Chet is a very team oriented mind. So I mentioned the 16 points. He got in foul trouble early in the first half. And I felt like Gonzaga did a good job of playing without him. They kept the game pretty close. But how did you feel about Chet overall in this game? Did the loss to the powerhouse of Duke and Paulo Boncaro deter you at all, and where you look at him in relation to his peers, or are you still pretty firm on the mindset that you had with Chet coming into the game?
It was weird. I was pleasantly surprised with how he played. And I know people might hear that and be like, what are you talking about? He got in foul trouble early. He was a non-factor really in the first half, but I like games like that when you're struggling and all of a sudden I wanted to see what he'd do in the second half. I wanted to see if he'd come out and kind of shy away from potentially picking up another foul, or if he would try to be like, no, I'm going I'm going to try to help us pull out a victory potentially. And I thought Chet just did a great job. Now, some people will look at the highlights and be like, well, he didn't really do anything flashy. I don't think Chet is that guy. I don't think he's going to, with the team he's playing with in college, they're just such a good passing team. That's something that Chet is fantastic at as a passer. He kind of understands, I don't have to make the assist, but this extra pass might get an official assist. So I just think he's going to be one of these guys that, Paulo's great. He's going to put up some games where he has, 20 points, 10 rebounds, or he might even reach 30 points. I think Chet's just going to be one of those more efficient guys that kind of makes an impact all over the place, that the box score might not measure just how much of an impact he makes. So, I'm not getting too down on tonight's performance. I still think he did a great job. He had some flashes where he was sensational on defense, as we expected. We saw early in the game, Boncaro went right at Chet, got into him and got it and won. And obviously I joked on Twitter that play is going to be played 98,000 times for the next 6 months. So
yes.
No, I think he's fine. I'm not too worried about the frame as of now. You brought up a good point earlier. He falls a lot, and yes, I understand. And, he's going to have to, of course, add some strengths down the line, but he just does so many little things and knows how to play team basketball that I still think everyone's going to be very high on him in NBA circles.
Yeah. And to address the point that you brought up that I said earlier, that he falls a lot, I said that earlier in the season, and that made me not so much of a fan for Chet. But watching him play against UCLA, and then even tonight, his value has gone up, in my opinion. And I made the comment, to you and to several others, that Chet's like a Venus flytrap to me right now, because I think that what people do is they fall into the mindset that like, oh, okay, this is a safe place for me to be, playing against Chet, backing him down in the paint, and they get comfortable. And I think Chet he's so smart, man, that he gets people to believe that they have openings, and then boom, the shot's gone. It's no longer there, and he corrals the rebound, and then he can bring the ball up the floor. It's a sight to behold. Watching that performance against UCLA had me thinking that. And even tonight, man, like, yes, he got in foul trouble early, and he pretty much stayed out. He didn't commit really any more fouls until later on in the second half, and he played a very smart game. And the scoring, it's an efficient 16 points. I mean, if you watch it, none of the shots were selfish. None of them were really forced. He actually hit a couple of really tough shots around around Williams, who had 6 blocks tonight. It was a phenomenal performance for him. But Julian Strother, this is a guy that I know that you were big on coming out of Vegas. I know a lot of other people liked him and Nebhard a lot. I thought that they both had a really strong game, but Strother led the team in points, 8 of 16, scoring 20 points, 3 of 7 from deep, 10 rebounds and assists and a steal, and not a single turnover. Tyler, what did you think about Strother tonight?
Yeah, I went into Vegas with Albert, and we were obviously excited to kind of get a look at Chet. We were excited to get to look at the UCLA prospects with, Peyton Watson and everything like that. But I was really intrigued to look at some of the young wings that Gonzaga had. And I hadn't watched too much of Strother going in, just because I kind of wanted my, hands-on view to kind of be my, evaluation. I wanted to draw an opinion from that. And the first game we saw there, I thought he made some nice flashes, and then left that game, and I was like, he had 15. And then the next game we went back against UCLA, he just kept jumping off this, jumping out at me. And I was just like, this guy could play. I like, he's tough. And I thought tonight he could have almost, made a statement that he's someone to watch. And he just keeps making these, extra effort plays. And then he's got good size, sophomore, he's around 6'7". He can shoot it from outside, and I think his shot's going to only get better. And plus, he wants the ball. Like, and I'm not saying just like as a scorer, he goes and gets it. He's a force on the boards. He's I think Jay Billis even mentioned like just one of the top rebounding wings in the country, because you just love the way he plays the game. He has that right mentality of, if I'm not shooting or if I'm not scoring, I can still go make a play for my team. And, I think he said, what do you have, 20 and 10 or over 20 and 10 tonight? I mean, he was just all over the place. And I really just like his upside. I think he's someone that draft fans need to start watching closely, because he could just be a player that teams get really intrigued with as the season keeps progressing. But he's going to need to keep showing this consistency, because I think he had a fantastic week and now he's going to pop up on some radars more than he was before. But if he can keep kind of bringing these performances to us, then I think he's going to heat up in a hurry.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that at all, because Gonzaga's a really deep team, but they need to have some guys who are just going to be kind of their mainstays. And I think that Strother is going to be one of those guys. Again, with Nebhart, I think that Nebhart had a pretty strong performance too. So, Tyler, that's going to close out the discussion that we have for Gonzaga and Duke. Unless, do you have any other final thoughts? Or are you ready to roll on to Baylor, Michigan State?
No, I can't do any more thoughts, because we'll be up till like 3 a.m. if I keep talking about Gonzaga and Duke. So yeah, that's a good place to stop. Strother is a good set to the next part.
All right, so from Strother over to number 6 Baylor taking on Michigan State. Baylor won this game 75-58, and let's just open up with the guy that I know that we're both really, really high on, that being Kendall Brown. He had a solid showing tonight. 12 points, 6 of 7 shooting, missed the 1 3-point attempt that he had, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 turnover. Tyler, I know that you're really high on Kendall Brown. I am too. He just seems like one of these guys that what his role is going to be at the next level. And when you can clearly identify something like that, that really ups your value, especially with the youth, the frame, the flashes that he shows in some of the areas that aren't really his calling card quite yet. I think that gives scouts a little bit of peace of mind that, like, hey, look, we can get this guy. He's going to be good now, and he's going to improve and continue to grow into something down the line. 12 points doesn't really seem like anything to write home about, but when you watch the film, I mean, he just pops, Tyler, as you point out with some of these other prospects. What did you think about Brown's performance with Baylor versus Michigan State?
He's one of those guys that I hadn't watched much early in the year. And I finally turned on the tape and I was just like glued to the screen. Mm-hmm. I just was like, okay, feed me more. I need to keep watching. And I'm actually going to do kind of like a little bit of a video breakdown on him next week for No Ceilings. But I don't think he's going to be a guy this year that's going to be a big scoring threat, but it's just the decision-making, the awareness, the understanding to play to his strengths. He's a freak athlete. I mean, The guy has pogo stick legs, and I think he's around 6'8". He's young. He just looks like there's so much raw upside that it's not like he's not performing. He just knows his role, and he knows how to not, like he doesn't force the issue too much. He understands, like, okay, I'm not a 3-point shooter, but if I'm wide open, I can make this shot. And if not, I can get my teammates a better shot. So, while you look at the box score where he has, only 12 points and then the rest of it's kind of, 1 assist, 1 rebound, he just is one of those guys I think makes a bigger impact than his box score is going to tell you. And I think the defensive upside's really strong. Like I said, really good athlete vertical, but he shows some good footwork and quickness laterally. It's just one of those guys that I joked with, who was I with? Oh, Nathan. I joked with Nathan about this, but it's on Draft Deeper. I should probably, give Nathan some love about what he does. But yeah, on Draft Deeper, I talked to him about it, and I said he's just one of those guys that I'm trying to figure out how to word it the right way. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. See, I'm too deep into my thought about him. But no, he's just special. And I think you're going to keep watching him throughout the year, and he's going to keep showing all these flashes, all these signs, but he makes the little reads and right decisions that are just especially, and you can't teach just some of the stuff and vision he has on the court.
Yeah, he's definitely one of these guys that I don't really use this term a lot, but it fits with him. He's a connector. You know what I mean? Like he's definitely he's what you want out of a wing. You know, a guy who could play multiple positions. He can defend multiple positions. He plays outside. He has a good handle. He has penetration ability. You know, the facilitation is there. He's probably never going to be a guy, although he did have a double-digit assist game already this season. It's probably never going to be a guy that you look to do any sort of primary creation out of. But there's several sets and several plays, Tyler, where you can definitely see him being an integral part of making a key pass to either a cutter or an open three-point shooter. And he's capable of making all of those reads. And that's something I really like about him. We touched on his defense. I want to kind of scale from him to Max Christie, a guy that he defended a lot. And it really showed in Max Christie's numbers. He only had 5 points, 2 of 6 shooting, 1 of 4 from deep, 2 rebounds, and assists, a steal, and a turnover. A guy who's kind of all over the place on everyone else's boards. Christie is kind of one of these guys that I need to see a little bit more from. I even felt that way before this game, but seeing him lined up across a guy like Kendall Brown, who is probably going to see a few of those guys at the next level, it raises concerns for me. Obviously, I see the appeal. You know, he hit an open 3 in this game, hit a pretty little jumper over a defender. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but there's flashes of a good player in a Max Christie. What did you think? Did this game kind of raise any questions or concerns for you on Christie's game? Or have you maintained the thought that you had coming into this game?
Yeah, I've maintained it. Before I dive into that, just because it's almost midnight here, so everyone's got to cut me some slack. I just remembered what I was going to say about Kendall Brown, so I'm just
go ahead.
this
Let's
in
bounce
here.
back.
I had said to Nathan, I think a lot of people are going to get Scotty Barnes vibes from Kendall Brown just with the way he plays. I'm not saying he's that type of defender, but he has that type of impact when he's on the floor. So I just wanted to throw that out. I'm not saying I think he's Scotty Barnes. I'm saying I think people are going to get that vibe.
Sure.
Okay, now going forward, because like I said, it's almost midnight. We're a little crazy now, but Max Christie is one of these guys that I'm convinced is going to be a late bloomer in the middle of the year, and I just believe in him. I think he's going to have this stretch of games where it's going to click and the shots can start falling because ever since I watched him, you know, before the season, I've seen the flashes. I'm really a big fan, and I know his numbers don't look great right now and he's not shooting it well, but I think it's only a matter of time before, you know, everything just starts to come together. Because, you know, Michigan State, they're a team like Gonzaga where they just kind of play within the system and they have a lot of guys that, you know, make good basketball plays and they're just usually tough. And they're not this team that usually gets guys that drop 30 every game. It just doesn't, that's not how it happens there. So I think that it's only going to be a matter of time before Christie starts to find his groove. He's showing us, like you said, some flashes. The flashes are really, really nice. And once the game kind of slows down to him and he starts getting some consistent confidence, I definitely think he's going to take off and scouts are going to be like, okay, there it is. Because he came into the year with some hype building about potentially one of these guys that could sneak up into the lottery even. And I definitely see it. I just think we got to wait. Like you said, we need some more time. And there's always late bloomers. That's what people forget. Like, just because you're struggling right now doesn't mean you're going to struggle all year. There's always these guys that kind of find their groove. I talked about it with Albert on No Ceilings podcast. You know, Jaden Ivey was a guy that the end of his freshman year, he started all of a sudden just flip this switch. And that's why he was building all this buzz going into the sophomore year. So Christie could definitely be a guy that all of a sudden catches fire. And I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he's one of these guys that we probably shouldn't panic on too much. But again, you see a little bit of merit into the people who made doubt, right? Especially being guarded like a guy, like I said, like Kendall Brown, a really talented defender. But let's bounce now to James Akinjo, because this is a player who transferred over from Arizona, who was a really talented team last season. Baylor had a lot of guards transfer over. Seemed like a pretty good place for Akinjo to go because there's going to be opportunity there. And it was a team that's going to be playing for something. We just knew that, right? Finished the game with 15 points, 5 of 14 shooting, 1 of 4 from deep, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 3 turnovers. Tyler, really electric player. He made a couple of just tremendous moves. I remember one where it was, a pretty spin around 2 guys and kicked it to an open teammate for 3. He just has these sudden bursts of quickness and energy that played out really well against Michigan State tonight. What did you think about Akinjo and his performance?
He's one of these smaller guards he's just a lightning bolt. He can get going in a hurry, and I almost think he's a better passer than in a weird way than he might realize when he's playing the game. Like I think he wants to be the scorer, and you see his shot selection sometimes can get a little bit of erratic. And you've seen that over his career. Like his field goal percentage isn't that high.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's really rolling, he's got some talent as a distributor. So I think when you're looking at a guy like that, he almost needs to realize, like, I don't have to score 20 if I can score 11 and all of a sudden have, 9 assists. Like, scouts aren't only obsessed with scoring. Like, if you can make the team better and understand how to play in a system, like that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, they want to see how you can make your team better. Like, some scouts will fall in love with guys that don't score a lot and make all the right reads and make, smart decisions and can play and make other teammates, better on the floor. So Akinjo's an interesting guy just because there's so much, he plays so damn hard and he's so quick. But it was just the decision making I would like to be a little bit better. And I know I'm nitpicking now, but that's just what I do. And he really does have gift as, a playmaker with some nice vision. I just would like to see him not force the issue with his shot so much, just kind of almost play with some more composure and pace. And, I like what I saw today. It's just the shot selection, the efficiency needs to come a little bit around.
Yeah, and that, I think that's a fair assessment. And when you nitpick, as you put it in your own terms, sometimes I think that players who aren't expected to be selected as high as maybe say a Kendall Brown, you have to nitpick. You have to look at these areas because if someone is saying like what's the stock of this player, that's eventually going to be brought up, and to me that's totally fair. But tonight I thought he did a good job of showing his burst, having a little bit of gravity to him on those drives because he could turn the corner so quick. And Baylor has no shortage of guys that could take advantage from an open jump shot. And Gabe Brown on the other end for Michigan State finished with 13 points, 4 of 11 shooting, 1 of 5 from deep, 5 boards, 2 assists, and a turnover. Gabe Brown is a guy who's been around for a little bit. Expectations were a little bit higher when he was a younger player, but, still part of the Spartans. Had a really good outing against Baylor tonight. What did you think about Gabe Brown? And is he a guy that's just going to be in every so often is going to have a good game player? Or do you think that, I believe it's his junior year, if I'm not mistaken, Tyler, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I'm sorry. But, in his junior season, do you think that he's kind of figuring the game out? Is it becoming a little bit easier for him?
Yeah, it's like you said, he came in with a little bit of hype coming into Michigan State, and it's just taken him, a little bit longer than some might have expected. But that just happens with college guys, and it's not the worst story. But Gabe's quickly becoming a guy that, I watched that game and you kind of make a note of, okay, I need to start watching Gabe Brown a little bit more. I need to pay attention to his progress throughout the year because he just pops off the screen with his athleticism. He's got good size. He's a little bit bulky. He's a big boy. So
left-handed players are fun too, man.
Exactly. So you like the flashes you saw. I definitely need to watch more of him. But what I saw today, those are games you just make a note. Like, okay, Gabe Brown impressed me. He popped off the screen. He made some plays that looked fantastic. You start looking into his numbers. You see that he's kind of been improving each year at Michigan State. So definitely someone you want to watch. And the athleticism and size sticks out to you. I think he hit a couple threes from outside, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he looked like he had some intriguing tools that you want to keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And you touched that outside shooting. He's 1 of 5 from deep, not pretty, but
Yeah.
he converted when he needed to. It felt like, and the defense totally respected his jump shot throughout the entire game. So, good performance from him. We'll touch on some of the team stats here. Baylor had field goal percentage of 49%. It was a little less than 4% better than Michigan State. They were only 27% from deep, 67% from the line. They had one more rebound than Michigan State, 4 more assists, 1 more block, 8 more steals. That helps out a lot, right? 9 fewer turnovers, but they did foul a little bit more because Baylor plays really hard defense. Any final thoughts on this Baylor Michigan State game, Tyler? Or you ready to roll into Syracuse Auburn?
I just think Baylor's going to be tough all year. It's just a classic Baylor team that just gets after it defensively, and they're gonna punch everyone in the face. So I think they're going to be one of those sleeper teams that they're not going to be the sexiest team when it comes to some of the other big boys in the country, but they just get after it, and they're going to be fun to watch. And watch Kendall Brown. Watch plenty of them.
Watch Kendall Brown. We got to shout out Matt Mayer too. I know that.
I know that Matt Mayer.
Yeah, no, Nathan's a big Matt Mayer guy. So we're talking about Baylor. We got to talk about Matt Mayer.
I'm going to have a war with Nathan about Matt Mayer. So it'll be an ugly episode when that day comes.
If nothing else, he has a really cool haircut. All right, yes, so we'll transition now from the final game that we plan on discussing tonight, that being Auburn versus Syracuse. Auburn was the 19th best team in the nation. Coming into this matchup, Syracuse is 3-2. Auburn, dog walked this team, man. It was 89-68. Obviously, the biggest name in this matchup has to be, Jabari Smith Jr. Finished the game with 22 points, 8 of 17 shooting, 4 of 8 from deep, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, a block, and a turnover. Tyler, after this game was over, I was thinking, I even put it out to Twitter, is like, is anyone else ready to admit, their guilty pleasure right now that Jabari Smith Jr. might be the best player in this draft class? And that was before, like I said, the Gonzaga Duke game where Paulo just came out and shut me right up. But what did you think about Jabari Smith, man? Because, coming off of not his best performance in this same tournament, I felt like he grew a lot actually in that game as that game progressed. But, going up against Syracuse, felt like he jumped right back to where he had left off.
Yeah, he had a tough last game, and I always like to see kind of how guys respond, especially when you're a young freshman. And fantastic game tonight and or today. My day's just all mixed up. But, I thought his last game he struggled, but he still made some really big plays down the stretch. And, that's something that I value so much when you're evaluating a prospect is if you're not having a good night shooting the ball, how are you still making an impact? And he was doing a lot of stuff over there. Today was just fantastic. It's funny watching him and then watching the Duke Gonzaga game because it's so early, and I've talked to you, like, I can't stand doing big boards or stuff like that early in the year, but this year I'm going to have to for no ceilings because the guys have basically forced me to. So
it's time to grow up, Tyler. Just make a big board,
thank
right?
You. But I think this is the first time this early in the year that you kind of feel like the top 3 is one combination of those guys. And it's so special because, we thought there was going to be some intriguing depth, and now the top of this draft class is looking just loaded because of what Jabari Smith is doing for Auburn to start the year. I mean, he has just been absolutely sensational. He, 6'10", lengthy, but he's super athletic. He runs the floor like a shooting guard. He's got handles. He can pull up from 3 whenever he wants. And he's just playing fantastic basketball, and he's performing at a level that I wasn't anticipating him reaching so fast. So it's just terrifying to think about what he can do like throughout the year if he keeps, playing at this rate. And I don't think it's that crazy if people are saying, "Hey, I like Jabari more than, Chet or Boncaro." Like, fine. Okay. I can't really argue with you with how he's playing right now, but if you're an NBA team, you're just hoping you get one of them because they're all just so special. But I've loved what I've seen from him at Auburn this year. I think his potential and his upside are just so special, especially if he can keep growing as a defensive player, because he's shown great strides on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. And I think tonight he really showed that too. And the counting numbers wouldn't indicate that as well. But tonight, going against, that iconic 2-3 zone that Syracuse always plays with, I was really curious to see how he would, play against Coach Boeheim in that system. And I felt like he did a good job. They ran him in the high post a lot. He found a lot of open players, which, I don't think that those assist numbers really did him justice because he was moving the ball around a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. Yeah.
And when they backed off of him, he has no problem showing off that pretty jump shot either from that mid range or from deep too. Hit a number of crazy shots, but his teammate KD Johnson has just been hot throughout this entire last tournament. 15 points, 6 of 14 shooting, 1 of 5 from deep, 5 steals, 3 rebounds, an assist, and 2 turnovers. KD Johnson, he plays much bigger than he is. I think I heard on the broadcast that he's around 6'1", 6'2". I was like, no way, this kid's at least like 6'5", 6'6", based on the way he plays. But he runs at a breakneck pace the entire game. Tyler, what did you think about KD in this game or just the tournament overall?
He was just a force watching him. And I same thing we were talking about with Michigan State and Gabe Brown. Like when I saw KD Johnson making plays, I was like, okay, write that name down, because he was just flying all over the place. And like you said, he had 5 steals. Like he was just determined to kind of be a game wrecker for Auburn. And I was very intrigued with what he did on the court. And it's just one of those guys like these games early in the year. I know a lot of people like to throw out the idea like, oh, it doesn't matter too much. Yes, it matters, because performances like that get people's attention when you're evaluating, because you're like, okay, now I want to see, I have him on my list. I want to see what he can do for the next couple of games. Can he build off that performance and keep putting a little bit of a groove together? And it's like you said, he's had a strong tournament. He just looks like this gamer who's just ready to compete whenever he gets a chance. And I'm like you, hearing he's 6'1", I was like, what? He just looked like he was just this physically imposing, like Tyreek Evans almost kind of guy that was just like physical and getting right up in you. So I was very impressed with him, and I'm definitely, circling him as someone to keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah, he might be one of these guys that starts creeping up into, second round drafts, or, he comes back the next year. Maybe he just continues to build off of how he's doing now. For Syracuse, there's a couple of guys who, I have on my, coming into the season big board list of names. It's like almost 200 players right now. It's ridiculous. But
bless your heart.
Dude, I'm a
200's
sicko.
a lot for me.
That's
like my nightmare.
I'm a sicko, and I know only 60 people get drafted, but I'm just like, if I do 60, then I'm like, okay, there's going to be snubs here. Well, if I do 80, then there's going to be like I said, I'm a psychopath. I'm not going to keep going on that.
It's okay. Rant. We're all a little mad. I get it.
We're all mad here, right? So a couple guys that I had from Syracuse to keep an eye on early in the season were Cole Swider and, son of the coach, Buddy Boeheim. Both finished with 17 points. Cole a little bit more efficient than Buddy. Both were only 2 of 6 from deep. I say only. I mean, there's players that wish they could do that, right? They combined for 7 boards, combined for 4 turnovers. Buddy with a couple of assists and a couple rebounds. Tyler, you're watching Syracuse. I don't think that many people had expectations that they were going to maybe beat Auburn, hope for a little bit of a competitive game. But Cole and Buddy, they're put in these positions when they're going up against super athletic, kind of defensive-minded guards with Auburn. And they just looked like they had to be like perfect the entire game for Syracuse to have a chance. And they just weren't, man. But what do you take away from performances like that from guys like Swider and guys like Boeheim? Um, just only glean on the positives, or do you just like, okay, some of the things that, were concerns, they're starting to kind of firm up a little bit?
Swider kind of impressed me a little bit just because he kind of played the game with awareness of how to be patient and get his shots. He just kept kind of making some plays that showed some maturity. And I know he's an older guy, but he just kind of did a little bit of everything. He spaced the floor. He had some nice fakes that after he spaced the floor, he drove to the lane and got a tough bucket. Just kind of liked how he played. It just had some good feel and composure. Now, Buddy's just a tough one for me, and I've been a little harder on him than normal. But he's a great shooter. I get it, but those are one of those games where I think the flaws kind of jump out at you because, like I hinted on before, when you're a shooter, if your shot's not falling, what else are you doing? And I think that can really point out some flaws with guys. Like, if you can't stretch the floor, do you still have the ability to put it on the ground and create your own shot? Can you try to figure out a way to get to the line and maybe, get yourself going? And, I know he finished with a tough shooting night. I know the stats look great because he finished with, what you said, 17 points. But
17, yeah.
Yeah, I just think he's one of these guys that I think everyone always gets a little drunk on the tournament role. Like when you get in a groove in the NCAA tournament, everyone's like, what are you talking about? He's great. But I always kind of pump the brakes because I'm like, if he was just so the whole year and he has this monster month, then, we all need to be careful with what we're talking about. So, and I'm not trying to bash Buddy. I mean, he might now go on a stretch for 3 games where he just starts lighting it up. But I think it's always important when a guy struggles to see how he reacts the rest of the game. Like, can he still have an impact? Like, that's just something that I see. Like, we talked about it earlier with Trevor Keels. I think he was like 2 for 10 at one point tonight. And, he looked at his box score. He's still, he had like high number of rebounds, high number of assists. He was making plays defensively. So that's just something that you want to watch with Buddy moving forward. If he has those tough shooting nights, what else is he doing to make an impact for his team? So, and Syracuse is always tough to watch because I just hate watching the zone as an evaluator. But no, I think it's one of those games. It was just, like you said, a tough matchup. Auburn just has all these athletes. Syracuse is kind of systematic with just smart players. And, Jabari did a great job. Like you hinted, I wanted to point that out. He did a great job from the high post. He made some smart reads, some smart passes where I was like, that was brilliant. That was perfect. So.
Yeah, for sure. I love the high post aspect in his game tonight, for sure. And again, he's just kind of reaffirming my love and affinity that I have for him. He's my guilty pleasure in college basketball right now. I would probably say comfortably he's my number 2 prospect. And figuring out who 1 and 3 is, I think, is the hard. It's weird that I have a clear cut number 2, but I don't know who my 1 or 3 is right now. But I just love Jabari so much that I know he's to me he's my number 2 player on the season.
Yeah, I am almost at this point where I just want to like get blindfolded and throw darts at like who's number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3, because it's fascinating. It's a great debate right now, and it's only going to keep getting stronger. And I think tonight it's going to have a lot of people drinking the Boncaro Kool-Aid, and I understand why. But I think Chet also showed in the second half that he can make an impact. I think he came out right away, and Boncaro went right at him, and he had a block on him. And so I just think they're so dominant, but they're dominant in so many, like, such different ways. Boncaro's this offensive force with great size. Chet's this defensive mastermind and plays with his instincts all over the floor. And then you got Jabari Smith, who looks like he was supposed to be this offensive firepower that all of a sudden now is doing great stuff defensively, and he can space the floor. So it's just this great debate of all these guys that just have such fantastic skill sets.
Yeah, and and Jaden Hardy plays in the G League. It's almost like an afterthought now that level of basketball exists at the same time too. But a guy that's getting a lot of considerations for top three player as well. So it's been a fun, interesting, young but good season so far, Tyler. And I appreciate you coming in and breaking down this fabulous Friday that we had. Feast week is what ESPN was calling it, and it was no short of a feast as far as good quality basketball. Before we close out, man, I just want to first off thank you for taking the time to come on so late or early, however you want to phrase it, and talking about the full slate of games that we had this Friday. And again, before we close out, man, would love just to give you the floor to promote No Ceilings and all the fine work that you gentlemen over there are doing.
Yeah, so we're at No Ceilings NBA on social media. We have a talented team of draft evaluators and guys that are talking about, all types of basketball, NBA analysts, and it's been a fantastic journey. I think we're up to about 8 guys right now, and we're excited with where we're trending. But subscribe. We have a Substack. It's 5 days a week. We're sending out multiple articles per day, and it's noceilings.substack.com, and it's absolutely free. So thank you so much for having me on. I've always loved to come on Draft Capital. It's always one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate you being our first returning guest. And we'll find another way to get you back on. So you definitely are not allowed to be a stranger here on Draft Capital. So, and again, man, I appreciate you coming on and all the hard work that you and the guys over there are doing. It's fun just being a fan and a friend of yours, and then obviously having you on the show. It's a blast, man, and very grateful for you coming on.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, it's never too late to talk hoops. So I love the late night grind. So thank you very much.
Yeah, man, absolutely. All right. Well, so as for my special guest here, Tyler, for myself, for my co-host Chris LeBron, who couldn't be here because he is more sane than I am. This has been Draft Capital. Appreciate everyone for watching and tuning in. We'll catch up with you guys